Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome to GX, and this is why America destroyed the F-14, then brought it back. Bachal, Navy decoded, obviously. F-14 Tomcat. Okay, here's my theory. US went to Iran to bomb Iran, saw a lot of F-14s there, bombed them. They're like, wait a minute, those things look good. Why don't we have that anymore? Okay, bring them back. I think that's what's happened. Obviously not. I don't know why you're bringing back F-14. Isn't that really old by now? Why does America need F-14? Is this like that Nighthawk type scenario where you bring them back just for training purposes? But you had Nighthawk, that's why you're using it for training. Bringing that back implies that you repaired it or something. Why are you doing that? F-14s, those, right? Like that wing retracts. It's awesome. When it wings it out, it looks like your normal plane. And then it retracts, it looks like this triangle kite type shape. I mean, I don't know much about F-14, but I guess I'll learn about it in this video. Is F-14 that good? How good it is? Like F-15 was a jump. Like, oh my god. F-15 is a powerhouse. F-16 was similar but for one engine. How good was F-14? I don't know. Let's do this one.
A fighter the United States Navy buried back in 2006 just flew into live combat. The footage comes out of Iran. Fully armed F-14 Tomcats recovering onto a runway after a real patrol. The first confirmed Tomcat combat since 1988. A 50-year-old machine, still climbing, still hunting, and the world stops to stare. Analysts marvel at Iran's F-14s, a radar still larger than anything in a Western fighter, still tracking cruise missiles half a century after it left the factory. But there is a truth almost nobody says out loud. Not a single line of that airframe, not one curve of its aerodynamics, not one algorithm inside that radar belongs to Iran. The Tomcat is a genuinely dangerous machine, and it has never, for one day, been an Iranian fighter. What stunned the world in 2026 is American engineering from the 1970s.
Yeah, it's not an Iranian plane, it's an American plane. Everybody knows that.
Grumman's and the United States Navies. This is a legend of our fleet, flying under a hostile flag. And here's the part that strains belief. The same nation that built this machine spent 2 decades shredding every F-14 it could find into 2x2 foot scraps, torching apart titanium beams so no part could ever reach Iran. Yet in 2026...
I don't know why I hate it whenever some awesome machinery like this gets destroyed like that.
That same nation passed a bill to weld 3 of them back into flying condition. So what makes a half-century-old machine worth keeping aloft by its enemy and worth resurrecting by the very hands that condemned it? Not the fame. The answer lives inside the way this aircraft was built. This is Navy Decoded. We don't retell legends you have heard 1,000 times. We take the machine apart and show you the engineering that made it so complete that time, embargo, and the cutting torch all failed to kill it. And to understand that, you have to start with the problem it was born to solve.
Hey, the wings retracted looks so awesome, man. Like, what is it, like the eagle suddenly putting the wings back and heading straight forward? That's insane.
That problem was not an enemy airplane. It was arithmetic. In the late Cold War, the deadliest threat to a carrier strike group was never a single enemy fighter. It was a flock. Regiments of Soviet bombers.
Oh yeah, F-14 was a aircraft carrier plane. So F-18 replaced F-14, right? So it was predecessor of F-18.
Tu-16 Badgers, Tu-22s, later the swing-wing Tu-22M backfire. Each carried long-range anti-ship cruise missiles launched from 200 nautical miles out and beyond. Picture the saturation raid. Dozens of warheads arriving at once, from every bearing, converging on a single hull. That is the problem the Navy handed its designers. And the arithmetic is brutal. You cannot swat each missile once it is already in the air. You have to stop the Archer before the bow is drawn, pushing your kill line out far enough to destroy the bombers before their launch point. The equation is time times distance times target count. A single-seat fighter with a short-range radar and 1 missile per target cannot solve it. The numbers do not close. The Navy's first attempt at a fighter that could solve this nearly broke the service. Washington tried to force one common airframe on both the Air Force and the Navy, and the naval version, the F-111B, came out too heavy, with carrier landing behavior the fleet could not accept. It took Vice Admiral Thomas Connolly testifying against his own department to get Congress to cut the program in 1968. But the Navy kept two jewels from the wreckage, the AWG-9 radar and the Phoenix missile. Grumman threw away the rest and built a brand new airframe around them, and the name Tomcat carried a quiet salute to Tom's cat, to Connolly himself. And that is the key to this entire video. The F-14 was not designed from the airframe outward, it was designed from the weapon system inward. The radar and the missile came first. The airplane was built around them, the way a freighter is built around its cargo. So let's start with that cargo. Let's start at the nose. The Hughes ANAWG-9, the heart of the machine, held the title of most powerful radar ever fitted to an operational fighter for 30 years, until the F-22's APG-77 arrived in 2005. It tracked 24 targets at once.
I mean, what radar F-15 had? Wait a minute, why is F-22 is the most powerful after F-14?
And held firing solutions on 6 of them independently, all while still sweeping the sky. The Tomcat was the first
Oh, there you go. F-14, the US needed the Tomcat to protect aircraft carrier from swarms from high-altitude Soviet bombers over the horizon, so it had a larger radar that can track very far distances. While F-15, air superiority fighter, was mostly dogfighting, so it needed like a radar that tracks things very fast, right? High-speed maneuverability. So it was different in that way. That's why I'm like, why did F-14 had a better radar? It's not about better, it's about different purpose.
Earth to do this, and remains one of the very few that ever has. Now the fist behind the eye. The AIM-54 Phoenix was, for decades, the longest-ranged air-to-air missile any fighter had ever carried. The best missile most other nations could field, the AIM-7 Sparrow, reached about 15 nautical miles. The Phoenix reached 100. A Tomcat could destroy a target before its opponent had even resolved the F-14 on radar. Past Mach 4, ceiling above 100,000 feet, over 1...
The Tomcat was the first one who had the ability to take down things at 100 miles range beyond visual range, over the horizon range. He was the first one fitted to an aircraft carrier, so he was the first jet with that capability that can flex in front of Soviet Union. Like you can't even get close to my aircraft carrier, I'll blow you out. That's why F-14 has this like legend behind it. I'm like, what makes F-14 so good? Because of this, the radar, this missiles, its capabilities. He was the first one to do that. You can't even come close to me.
1,000 pounds, and the Tomcat was the only platform on the planet that could launch it. No other air force, no other nation ever held this weapon. The mechanism is the elegant part. The Phoenix is a true fire-and-forget weapon. It climbs into the stratosphere on mid-course guidance from the AWG-9, then lights its own active radar for the final stretch, freeing the mother radar to guide the next shot. That is how one airplane fights 6 engagements at once. In 1973, a single Tomcat fired 6 Phoenix at 6 separate targets in one pass, the 6-on-6 test, and half a century later, no fighter has repeated it. Now imagine that same airframe on an American carrier deck today. The missiles under its wings would not be Iran's homemade Fa-Kor 90, the copy reverse-engineered from a captured Phoenix. They would be the newest American iron, the AIM-120D AMRAAM, the AIM-9X Sidewinder, the long-range AIM-174B that just gave the fleet back its reach. A 50-year-old jet carrying the weapons of today because it was always an American platform built for American hardware. All of that has to live somewhere, and the AWG-9's antenna alone is 3 feet across. That is why the nose is so oversized. On this aircraft, the weapon defined the shape of the airplane, never the other way around. The nose gives us reach. But that reach only matters if the airframe can carry it to the right spot, slow enough to hold station 200 nautical miles out, fast enough to dash to the intercept at Mach 2. That is a contradiction every other fighter has to compromise. The Tomcat refused to. A carrier interceptor has to do 3 jobs that fight each other. 1. Loiter slowly at 200 nautical miles to hold a patrol line for hours, which demands a large wing with high lift. 2. dash past Mach 2 to race toward the intercept, which demands a small, swept wing with low drag.
Is that the reason why bringing it back? To me, it feels weird. I mean, you are making 6th gen fighter for the aircraft carrier, and maybe you need something that can do this specific job. You only have Tomcat. Like F-35 probably can't do it. It doesn't have that kind of F-18 probably can't do it. So you're bringing back F-14 for this? I don't know. To me, it still feels weird. It can't be true. You're not going to bring back F-14 just to do this job. If you have this like a crack in the armor, you'll fill it with some kind of a tactic or something rather than using this. I don't know.
3. Recover safely onto a crowded deck, which demands maximum lift at low speed. A fixed wing, like the F-15s, like nearly every conventional fighter, is forced to split the difference across all 3. Get good at one, and you give up the other 2. Grumman refused to split the difference. The Tomcat's wings changed their sweep angle to match the state of flight, spread to 20 degrees for a 64-foot span and 565 square feet of area in the loiter, takeoff, and landing regimes. Swept back to 68 degrees and a 38-foot span for Mach 2 and above. On deck, the crews can oversweep them to 75 degrees to save parking space. Same aircraft, best in class in all 3 regimes, no trade. And this is where the engineering reaches its peak. The Tomcat was built as a...
That is a good point, right? Like, you should never see any old plane. I mean, too old, maybe it's a different thing, but you should not see slightly older planes. F-14 is slightly older when you realize how old F-15 is. So you should never see slightly older planes like this and think that they are really technologically weaker than the current one. No, it's about what US military needed and how they went forward. F-18, F-15 can't retract its wings. So this has its like low drag and like a parking space. All this plus point is given to F-14, right? So clearly in that area, this is going to be better, right? The radar is like really big. Nose is really big. So there are many areas for interceptors and things is going to be better. Not because newer plane sucks. It's because that was priority back then. Nowadays priority is different.
A long-range interceptor, and it became one of the finest dogfighters ever to launch off a deck. So what does that buy in a close-in fight? Everything a heavy interceptor is not supposed to own. The Tomcat tips the scales near 74,000 pounds fully loaded. It has no business turning with a lightweight fighter. But spread the wings forward to 20 degrees and 565 square feet of area drops the wing loading through the floor. More lift, less energy bled in the turn, a tighter circle. And the pilot never manages it. The Central Air Data Computer schedules the sweep on its own, so in the heart of a merge, the wing is already where it needs to be while he keeps his hands on the fight. A fixed-wing fighter carries one wing for every job. The Tomcat reshapes itself to the moment. Sweep the wings back, and the same airframe becomes a clean, low-drag dart that holds its energy in the vertical and runs down whatever it points at. High-speed slash, low-speed scrap. The Tomcat does not have to choose. That is the gift of variable geometry. And all of it rests on a single wing box forged from one piece of titanium, strong enough to carry those G-loads through every sweep angle without tearing. Remember that titanium. It becomes the cruelest knot at the end of this story. The nose and the wings tell us what the Tomcat was built to do, and what it could do that no one expected of an aircraft its size. But a machine's true character only shows when you set it beside the one that replaced it, not to crown a winner, but to see two opposing philosophies of design. In 2006, the Tomcat left the deck, and the FA-18EF Super Hornet took its place. Ever since, people have argued the wrong question. Which one is better? That question has no answer, because these two machines were never answering the same question. They are two solutions to two different optimization problems. The right question is...
I mean, in a lot of areas, F-15 is better. Obviously, like I said, and like even he said, what you need dictates how you're going to make a machine, like a jet plane. Doctrines and how tactics are moving forward is going to change how the design goes. But at the same time, decade by decade, technology gets better as well. Engines get better as well. So let's not get it twisted. F-18 is better than F-14, not to mention a lot of electronics on it. There's a reason why it's 4.5 gen plane. But yeah, there are things that F-14 can do, which F-18 can't. That's a compromise.
Is not which is better. It is what was each one built to optimize. The Tomcat was optimized for a single objective: win the air battle in defense of the fleet at any cost. It owned that mission end to end, from a Phoenix kill at 100 nautical miles down to a turning fight in the merge. Everything served air dominance: the long reach, the enormous radar, the morphing wing that let a 74,000-pound interceptor knife fight. And the price was real: heavy, complex, 30 to 60 maintenance hours for every hour in the air. That is the bill for refusing every compromise inside the one domain it was built to rule. The Super Hornet was optimized for the opposite problem. The Cold War was over, the Soviet bomber swarm had dissolved, budgets had tightened, and a carrier air wing now needed one airframe to balance the whole mission set: air combat, strike, reconnaissance, aerial tanking, and, in the Growler variant, electronic warfare. The Super Hornet deliberately traded away the extreme reach. Its AMRAAM reaches roughly 70 to 86 nautical miles, its combat radius is shorter, in exchange for things the Tomcat never had: sensor fusion, a networked data link, far lighter maintenance, lower cost, and more fire-and-forget missiles per sortie. It is an outstanding multi-mission aircraft, still flying on the front line today.
Not to mention it's very smaller, right? So it also has very small radar section because it's a small plane, right? Apart from any of the 5th gen plane of America, it has a smaller radar section than the Su-57, which when I first heard of it, it's like, how does that make Su-57 stealth plane? And if Su-57 is stealth plane, then Super Hornet is a stealth plane, isn't it?
This is the heart of it: difference, not hierarchy. Optimizing for one objective buys supremacy but costs weight, money, and upkeep. Optimizing across many buys flexibility and endurance but tops out short of supreme at any single one. The Super Hornet was designed to blend into a larger system, and it does that brilliantly. The Tomcat was designed to be the entire system itself. Different roles, different fates. Now gather the nose and the wings together and watch what happens when they fuse into a single thing, whole enough that neither its enemy nor its maker could let it go.
Why can't you make planes like this again with a retractable wing? It looks awesome, man. I mean, I know why. Modern science, modern material science, better like understanding of aerodynamics. You don't need to do that. You can do clever things with the wing and, what do we call rudders, whatever. And you can basically achieve the same thing. You don't even need vertical tail nowadays. You're removing that. So like you don't need those things, but it looks so cool, man.
Taken apart, each piece is impressive. But the legend was never in the pieces. It is that they form one closed system. The nose sees 24 targets and throws the Phoenix 100 nautical miles out. The morphing wings carry the airframe to the right spot and speed to take the shot, then bring it home to the deck. Remove one link and the whole equation collapses. This is not a fighter that carries good weapons. It is a fleet air defense system packaged into a flying airframe. So now, the question from the opening: why is America restoring 3 of them? Start with what that bought us. Through the Cold War, Tomcat stood watch against Soviet bombers across the GI-UK gap, and the saturation raid never came. The Phoenix was almost never fired in anger by American crews, and that was not waste, it was victory.
Yeah.
When the other side runs the math and sees no opening, the battle ends before it begins. A system so correct, it never had to prove itself. That is the first layer of the legend. But that same wholeness...
I love how people say, like, money you put into F-22s in order to make them is a money wasted. F-22 was never used in not real scenarios. Yeah, there's a reason behind that, because you have F-22. Whenever somebody thinks about attacking America, they're going to think about all those things. They have F-22s, they have B-2s, now they have F-35s, they have like 12 supercarriers. You know what, let's calm down. Let's not try to do what Japan did before the start of the World War II. These are deterrents. There's a reason behind this. So this is why F-47 is a thing. Anyone would think like, why would we need F-47? We already have F-22. Nobody's even challenging that. No, people are getting close, so you need to walk even far ahead. So now F-47.
Created a stranger problem, the root of why we later destroyed our own jets. When the embargo hit Iran in 1979, American intelligence was certain the 79 Tomcats there would be scrapped within months without Grumman. Half a century later, they are still flying. Iran even pushed a reverse-engineered Phoenix, the Fa-Core 90.
One thing I'm going to say, like, engineering is such an awesome thing. Anyone with a decent, decent knowledge of something can reverse engineer it. That's how engineering works. You just need people with, level of commitment. So yeah, Iran, them thinking like, oh, wait a minute. Same thing with F-35 now. People are like, oh my God, if we take F-35, without America, we can't do nothing. No, but like something like Iran, if they get their hands on F-35, will eventually figure out a way to make it work. Might not work 100% perfectly, the way it would have done with American hands, but they can still make it work. That's how engineering and science works. You can reverse engineer things.
Into production in 2018. It was precisely because the design was so close to undying that the Pentagon later had to destroy it so brutally. Cutting the titanium apart with torches was the only way to be certain no spare ever reached Tehran's fleet. We shredded the Tomcat because it was too perfect to die on its own. Return to that footage we opened with. What stunned the analyst in 2026 was not anything Iran invented. It was an American design so complete that nearly 50 years of embargo, with no factory parts and no Grumman engineers, still could not kill it. Iran keeps these jets flying, an impressive feat of maintenance under sanctions. But maintenance keeps a machine alive. Only the design makes it worth keeping alive. Every flight hour of the Iranian F-14 is an endurance test that 1970s American engineering is still passing. Call it Iran's jet if you like, but the genius on display belongs to the drafting tables of Long Island, not Tehran. The flag painted on the tail changed. Every rivet of the engineering underneath it stayed American. So why bring them back now, after 2 decades of grinding them into scrap? Because by 2026, the calculus that justified the destruction had shifted. Iran's pool of donor airframes had run thin, and Tehran's maintenance network was worn down. For the first time in 20 years, a titanium hostage could be set free. And so the Maverick Act, Senate Bill S-4161, would let the Navy hand 3 airframes from the AMARG boneyard to a center in Huntsville. One of them coaxed back into flying condition, the other 2 preserved whole for public display.
It's for museum. I knew it. I just knew, like, no way you're bringing back F-14 for any military purpose. That just feels weird. If you're that desperate, you would have just made another one. You would have just like, screw it, I don't care. Give money to Lockheed or something. Make me another something like F-14, but modern. I don't care if money is wasted. America's rich enough that even with all the problems, even with all the budget cuts, they would still have ego and pride to just like, you know what, make another F-14 if we need it. They would not just bring back F-14 just to use it. What is this, like the Top Gun Maverick? It's just weird. So like I knew that, like they would not just bring back these things.
All of it funded by private donation, not a dollar of taxpayer money. And one of those 3 is no anonymous hull. It is Bureau number 159437, the VF-32 Swordsman F-14A, that on January 4th, 1989, downed a Libyan MiG-23 over the Gulf of Sidra and has carried the name MiG-23 Killer ever since. The same machine that once used the very system we just dissected, radar, reach, the morphing wing, to win a real fight is being pulled back from the edge of the scrap line and welded whole again, this time to stand before the next generation of engineers rather than to fly another patrol. A legend with a combat record, saved from the torch that nearly took it. So return to the question we opened with. Why is a machine this expensive, this demanding, this long retired, worth both destroying and resurrecting? Before we answer that, one thing. If taking a machine apart down to its physics is what you came for, that is the whole reason Navy Decoded exists. Subscribe, and we will keep doing exactly this. Now, the answer. It is not the air combat record, and it is not ease of operation. The Tomcat was never easy. The answer sits somewhere an engineer rarely says out loud. The F-14 is a legend because it was built whole, a complete fleet defense system inside a single airframe, not a fighter carrying a few good weapons. The nose, the folding wings, the philosophy of being its own system, none of it was decoration. It ran so deep that the machine both deterred its enemy without firing a shot and refused to die for half a century. It is why America once cut this jet's titanium beams apart, afraid it was too well built to die, and now welds those same beams back together. Not to fire a missile, but so a new generation can see what a machine built right looks like. Most weapons are remembered for what they did. The Tomcat is remembered for the completeness of what it was. Engineer something so thoroughly that its enemy will not test it and its own maker cannot leave it in the ground, and the line between a weapon and a legend begins to disappear. That is the Tomcat, and the kind of machine we will keep taking apart, one airframe at a time, for as long as you keep watching.
Yeah. When it comes to military stuff, that is so true. I mean, it can be true. Probably not the case with all of them, but every frame, everything will have their own advantages that newer might not have. I didn't know about the F-14. Like F-14, like in my head, the picture is clear what F-14 is, what it was made for, right? So F-14 is insane radar that can look beyond horizon. Obviously, you have better now with F-22 and others, but at the time, this was insanely powerful. With 100 nautical miles interceptor missiles, this was a powerhouse back then. When this launched, you probably saw F-14 as like an untouchable powerhouse, because this is a new superpower that was given to the like Navy. You can't even come close to my aircraft carrier. I'll shoot you down. I can see you. Nobody else can see you. I can see you, and I can shoot you down. Basically, panicking Soviet Union back then. And obviously, F-15 doesn't have the radar that type of, because it's a different purpose. F-18 is much more advanced than F-14, but doesn't have the radar like that, doesn't have like retractable wings, right? A lot of things it doesn't have, but it's better in many other cases. Like I said, let's not get it twisted. F-18 is much more advanced than F-14. But some things F-14 does is really well, and being that old, that's insane. And you sold them to Iran? All right. Well, there you go. Why America destroyed the F-14, then brought it back to put it in a museum. That made sense. Bachal Navy Decoded. If you like my subscribe, and also next time.